Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks, and sorry for the delay. I apologize for that. I was getting some uh spikes, some weird, strange issues, so I had to reboot and restart it and all that kind of good stuff. Anyway, you guys don't need to hear about that. Finally, I'm here. Apologize for those who are just like, is DBJ going to have a an episode today? Well, I am. Also, for some reason, I'm getting lots of. There it is. I'm getting strange flares from my lighting. Okay, thank you very much for being part of the show. Really appreciate it. We're going to talk about some um, high-minded game design ideas, and that those of us that are armchair game designers and or wish to be have some. We have some challenges to look at, and which is why game design is a little bit more difficult than we like to give it credit for. And I'm not talking about the things that have nothing to do with game design that game designers also have to learn, but we're going to talk more in game. And uh, and I'll talk a little bit about how the sausage is made sometimes, and why it is that as those of us that experience multiple games start getting this, or at least falling into one game, and then why it is that there is a propensity for people that the minute you start playing more than one game, you want to study ever more games. So you often get someone who only plays like one game, or you become a polygamist and start going down these weird, strange rabbit holes, discovering more and more games until you either fall into something that you become comfortable with, or money kind of slows you down, and so many other things. So we're going to talk about scale and challenges and boy, I forgot the rest of it. And um, outcomes and difficulties. And it was difficult for me to figure out how to very simply talk about like scale and difficulty in a tabletop role playing game. So we're going to start with something very simple, and then we'll expand it out into some more high minded situations. So, what is difficulty? So, to make this extremely simple, when a wall is difficult to climb in a tabletop game, is the difficulty to climb that wall, should it remain the same, and then characters as they get greater skills just have an easier time climbing that wall? Or as players gain more skills, should the difficulty of performing and climbing that same wall get just as difficult to move with the level of the greater skills for the characters? Now, I fall on the idea, and I'm going to explain why there seems to be people on both sides of this, but um, I fall on the side that there should be static difficulties, and players just get better, and at a certain point, that difficulty just becomes it becomes a non-factor. So in the beginning of a character's career, to climb that wall, it may be very difficult. Mid-career, it's like 50-50 chances maybe, and then as they get a greater career, why bother even rolling? They automatically climb that very difficult to scale frictionless wall, or whatever the case may be. And sometimes in games, they present us with a series of difficulty charts, right? And they'll say, okay, well, this is easy, this is medium, this is hard. And in the very beginning of the game, we crack the book open, our players sit down, and they go, okay, this is great. And then as the characters get better at doing a thing, they acquire experiences and skills, they acquire boons and benefits and such. Eventually, those challenging difficulties start to go away one by one, until there isn't anything to challenge them. And yeah, yeah. And like Drew says, either yeah, talking about like should things scale and move with the characters, or should they be static? And like Drew says, yeah, Neither, but I've been on record before that I'm no longer interested in catering to that competency nonsense. And there is a third, how do I say this? There's a third leg of this conversation, and I think um, it involves simulationism, and the fact is that there are many games that don't have any simulationism at all, or rather it's not interested in asking whether we climb walls and how difficult it is to climb a wall. It's there to tell us a different story. Legend of the Five Rings is, I'm trying to think of a game that does this off the top of my head, and Legend of the Five Rings is a good example that it's not really interested in whether you succeed or fail in climbing the wall, right? That's just a side effect. It wants to know why you are doing it. Like, are you doing it with like honor or glory or duty or passion or something like that? And the success or failure of climbing the wall is a byproduct of why it is your characters acting the way they are or how they are acting, not necessarily like what skills they use. So yeah, sometimes, and that can be a very strange thing to get across to some players when you sit down and play a game and it's like, yeah. Drew says that is the difference between task resolution and conflict resolution. And sometimes these, mind you, if you're just a player and you're like a beer and pretzels person, you just want to show up and like kick ass. These kind of concepts will just go straight over that type of player's head. Like I don't. They sit down and they look at a character sheet and they're just like, so where's my beat ass skill? And it's just you have things written on it like resolve and guilt and um relationship with mother or something like that, and they're just like, what is this about? That's why I think Powered by the Apocalypse rubs people the wrong way, because it is a simplistic numerical game with complicated conflict resolutions that have nothing to do with how competent your character is. And also it, sometimes the scale of a difficulty is also difficult to assess in many types of role-playing games. Like, for example, I I've used this example before, and I'm going to use it again with a little bit more detail. So uh, I drive a car to work, and no matter how no matter how many pages of rules there are in games, there are very few, if any, rules for how many times I should have a task resolution for me driving to work. And I would contend that there is no die roll for me to drive to work unless there is something out of the ordinary. Like there are plenty of times when I've driven back and forth to work and I don't remember doing it, because it's just become that I live very close to work, so it's like I don't get on highways. I don't get in very much traffic, and it takes me between 10 to 15 minutes based on traffic lights. So it's like if something random rolled into the street, like there's a chance that a deer might cross my path because of where I live. I live on the edge of a heavily wooded region that's wide, and there are deer that they live back there. A ball could roll in the street. Someone's brakes could give out, something like that. In which case, then I should make a die roll. But most games don't tell you how many times you should or should not make die rolls, and then they, more often in indie games than not, they'll even tell you, please stop making all the die rolls. Your success or failure is unimportant. We're trying to tell a story here. There's a certain level of professionalism. Of course, you can automatically do it. Why bother making the die rolls? And then there's a certain level of like, no, just because you decide to jump off a cliff and flap your arms doesn't mean you get to make a die roll to see if you actually do it or not, right? So, Drew's like, relationship with mother? Are we talking about Oedipus Rex? Yeah, relationship with mother. That's a different game. That's that's an indie RPG called Freudian Slip, and you can take that the way you wish. Yeah. Yeah, Mulder just keeps relying on his "I want to believe" trait, though. Yeah, Anon. I got an issue with you, Anon. You've been cheating on me with Knights of Knights of Last Call. I was watching a part two for his necessary skills for game masters or something like that, and I saw you were there too because I listened to slash watch Knights of Last Call as well. So very cool. Yeah, yeah. And strangely enough, I would like a game where it's like you have a trait like I want to believe trait. You could do that easily in Fate, but it would be pretty interesting to like have like if my character believes a thing is true, then the thing is true. There's a little bit of that in some role playing games, I think. Uh, but anyway, the to defend the world gets more difficult as the players get higher difficulty. I mean higher professionalism. I will say that at a certain point, it makes the game part of the game becomes unusable if difficulties don't grow with the player character's capabilities. And um, for example, the 0 to hero type of characters, climbing walls, maybe it's difficult for the character to climb the very easy to scale wall, whereas a wall made of frictionless glass or the dark castle carved out of solid obsidian with where you can see um, your reflection in it. Of course that wall will be more difficult, and the 0 character who just came out of their farm village or something would never be able to scale that wall, whereas this character, given 12 years of experience, um, can scale this wall without effort. Now, yeah, shout out to Heath Geek first and Roll for Combat too. Roll for Combat's a little bit negative nanny to me, but I like the conversation though. Yeah, I every once in a while, like I can dip my toe back in, and then after a while, I'm just like, yeah, I don't like punching bags as channels, but yeah, but but brilliant individuals, so I have to give them that credit. Yeah. I love people who pull numbers. I'm not a very good. It's difficult for me to pull true um, uh, numbers when challenging the effects of things, like when it comes to like marketing and corporate structure and stuff like that. But yeah, Drew says, imagine there are or had been no aliens in X Files, but Mulder literally wished them into existence to deal with the loss of his sister. That's right. That is right. You know, um, this brings up anyway, and you got me thinking of another issue about player expectation and listening to the players and randomness and non-randomness when you listen to the players and introduce things to confirm their suspicions, and how that's actually a good game master trait to have rather than a one that isn't. It's almost quantum ogering, which that might deserve its own stream. But going back to scales and difficulties, I think this some of this can be solved very easily, and I think because in our normal tabletop role playing community, we also have social anxieties. Like I think the propensity for brilliance is in direct ratio to social anxieties, and a lot of this stuff can be solved with simple conversation or just being upfront with the thing, right? Like imagine yourself, you're just trying to you want to tell your players that if they don't succeed in a thing, a bomb's going to go off and destroy a city block, but they don't know it. But at the same time, they need to kind of know it to get the things. You just tell them, right? No, your player doesn't know. No, your character doesn't know this thing, but your player does, right? It's the proverbial describing the bad guys doing bad things, even though the players are not. I'm sorry, even though the characters are not in the room, you're describing a cut scene that the players are aware of, And then when we go flashback to our characters, the characters can go, I have a sneaky suspicion about blah, 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 right? And I, I get that we as creators like to think of ourselves as being sneaky and brilliant, and we want to tell a good story. But a lot of that is just bullshit, right? Because um, role playing games are like trying to make the world's best screenplay or novel or graphic novel or movie or television series first pass with your friends while like eating pizza or doing it online, like live streaming it or something like that. Like that's an impossibility. It's just impossibility. So just putting things out front, I think, solves a lot of this. And especially when it comes to difficulty numbers and challenges and if players succeed or fail and what are the consequences of that, just state that up front. And for the most part, I hear the argument that, well, my character wouldn't know this thing. And I'm thinking in my head, like, well, maybe they would, right? Like when someone says, like, well, you don't know the monster's down to half hit point, really? Like, we in our heads all day long, we assess percentage chances of success and failure all the time. We may not add a number to it, but as human beings, we do it all the time. Do I make a left turn or right turn? If I make a left turn, there's 5 more stoplights than the right turn, but there's less traffic. But if I go the other way, I go to a main artery road and everyone takes that main artery road. And we do a cost effect analysis and make a decision off of that. Um, when if those of us that aren't in relationships, which I am in one, you know, what's the horror of walking up to a stranger to try to get to know them, to open up yourself to saying, hey, this person's intrigues me. I sure would like to talk to them some more, but I am sure scared of the rejection. And we go, and we say to ourselves, I've got a charisma of like 8. I got like a negative modifier. I don't know if I want to do this, right? Or we say to ourselves that we have that, and the other person is thinking, like, I hope they talk to me. Yeah. Yep. And says there's a lot of wanting to avoid accountability for results in this hobby and use randomizers to do so. Yep. Like Adon says, yeah, hit points is conceptually ambiguous anyway. And many of us eventually find out that it's highly ambiguous. You know, there's always the argument of it makes no sense for a 0 character to have 5 hit points and then later have 60 hit points. How is it that they are more immune to arrows and slings and things like that? Whereas I would make the argument that no, they're not more immune to it. It is uh, it is a and if it is never described this way, but my headcanon says no, their greater hit points are meaning that the horrors and lethality that they come in contact with, they're skilled enough to suffer less percentage result of harm from said thing. So an untrained person gets shot directly in the chest with an arrow, where someone with 60 hit points knows that the arrows, you know, a left-handed person who fires an arrow will tend to go towards my right shoulder, so I better lean to the left or whatever. You know what I mean? It's things like that. So it's more about knowledge and ability to confront dangers and endurance and luck and things like that and other variables and stuff. Plus adding a sprinkle of flavor in there, like maybe the wizard with 60 hit points is using magic to deflect attacks away from them or something like that, and it's just a flavor, how a flavorful trait is written in there. Or described in the narrative of the world or something. Now, mind you, that's just me, but there's a lot of people who are just like, that doesn't make any sense. This is stupid. And then we get into semantics and such. Now, as a person who feels like static challenges, greater skill, but static challenges, my not just defense of it, but I would feel that the world should accommodate the greater skill and then greater scale, because we're going to talk about scale as well, of the player characters. So, for example, the the zero to hero concept again. Sure, all the if you're playing fantasy, they're just delving into fighting giant rats or something in the basement of the tavern. Whereas later on, they're fighting hordes of goblinoids and easily beating them back. Hey, there's 10 for every one of us. And then someone in a group is like, well, that means we're evenly matched or something silly like that. And so I can understand why that is. Now, if the game doesn't have enough challenges to meet the higher levels of the players, I would suspect that they didn't scale the game to meet the characters' expectations. In Fantasy D20, for those who don't remember, there was a reason why people didn't play past like 8th to 10th, 11th level characters, because by that point there was built into the game of especially in the OSR, that your character is expected to retire, and literally your character became what was known as your name level. So let's see if I can find one of these. Fighter chart for AD&D Player's Handbook. Let's see if I can find. Ooh, let's see if we can find some imagery here, and see if we can find the named levels. Grognardia. No, those are saving throws. There's a player's. Is that it? Those are all the pole arms that got me into gaming in the first place. I love myself some pole arms. Oh, no, no, no. Can I zero player's handbook? Um, I can't see it. Can't see it. Cannot zero in on said thing. Oh, there it is. Well, I think I literally just got the entire player's handbook by accident, by looking it up. All right, so we're going to find some name levels here if I can just if I can get to it. Because I haven't flipped through a player's handbook, the original player's handbook, in so long. Ooh, there's a cleric. Hey, cleric is pretty good. All right, we're gonna save this. Sorry, didn't even think about using this. Yeah, Adon says yeah. Also collapses under the weight. It cancels. Also collapses under the weight of its own complexity. Absolutely, and I would dare say that in fantasy, there is a propensity to not. Let's do that. There's a propensity to not. Um, ex- there are tier levels in the game that are not explicit in how to accommodate those tier levels, if that makes sense, right? Like, it we call it zero to hero, but does the game actually tell us what zero to hero even means? I don't know. So anyway, this is from the player's handbook from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. The cover of this particular book, hardcover book at the time, has the statue with the characters trying to pull the gemstone out of the eye, and this is the cleric. And if you take a look at the cleric, you'll see that there are names here. And at first level, experience level 1, you're an acolyte, and as you went up each level, you had a different title. And for some reason, you're between 4th and 5th level, you're still known as a curate. I guess maybe because they didn't have a thesaurus or study to have that many. I didn't even realize that. But you even become a llama and such. Some of these titles are taken from different cultures, which I think was always cool, but it's a little weird to call it like medieval Eurocentrism, but it pulls from these other cultures. But anyway, by 9th level, you become a high priest. And at that point, there are mechanical features in the game to retire your character. I'm going to see if I can the see if I can find the fighter. Let's see, because I'm not exactly sure what page that's going to be on. Let's see, there's Paladin here. Um, mm, mm, mm. Oh, there it is. Or there's one. Ranger. Okay, so sorry. I apologize. So here we have the Ranger, because Ranger was kind of a subcategory of fighters at the time. And even under Ranger, you start out as a runner and you move up in order from runner, strider, scout, corsair. I'm pronouncing it. Tracker, guide, pathfinder, and then at eighth level you become a ranger, and then at ninth level you become a ranger knight, and then at 10th level you become a ranger lord, and then from there on it's just your hit points kind of slow down and things like that. But yeah, there's a number of these that are taken into account for this, and here's the illusionist. And again, you don't become name level or illusionist until you reach level 10. And you start out as a prestidigitator, minor trickster, then a trickster, master trickster, uh, kabbalist or kabbalist, visionist, phantasmist, apparitionist, spellbinder, and then illusionist. And the reason why I bring that up is because there was a context to the scale. Yeah, like more like 0 to 10. There is a context to the scale of characters' capabilities that um, maybe is not being embraced, which could give a which, if we have some context to it, when players go from say tier 1 to tier 2 in fantasy gaming, we understand the kind of challenges that will be uh, that the players will encounter certain challenges and the difficulties of those. For example, let's get away from combat for an example. Players may need to use social interactions to convince one person to interact with one NPC to accomplish a very simple task. The classic guard at the gate to get into a city state. Do you seduce, bribe, request, parlay, use diplomacy, corrals, intimidate, those kind of things, and it's a one-on-one. Pass fail maybe, or guard lets you through, but then calls other guards to, hey, watch those interlopers. I don't trust them. Something like that. As characters gain as the scale increases, these conversations may have longer lasting effects. I'm not talking to the guard to let me in. I'm talking to the guard to say, hey, you need to gather all of your guardsmen. How many are there? Well, there's 37 of us. Okay, great. Collect all of them. You need to defend the town against a greater evil. Maybe later on, you may have to go to higher and higher levels. You're not talking with one person to achieve one simple thing like opening a door. It may be your a character's social interaction may affect cities, states, countrysides, nations, planets, even galaxies, and things of that nature as the scale gets higher. And so, not only does the scale get higher, but the consequences of success and failure may be greater based on those interactions. So, much like today, rich and famous people saying offhanded comments, taking them out of context, and having the world in an uproar, the same may be done for player characters. An errant conversation with a guard may pull the ire of a united galactic federation or something like that. That's just like they demanded the guard let them into the secret data of the galactic Valerian something, whatever. And the players are like, I just wanted to get into the room. They were stopping me for what I was doing. And then the guard's like, yeah, and he intimidated me and tried to say I was going to get fired. And also said he was going to molecularly disassemble all of my family and friends. And the PCs are like, I'm just rolling their eyes like, seriously? Oh my goodness. And so the same may be for, again, when it comes to consequences and scale, the simple thing is just communicated to the players, right? Like, there doesn't need to be a secret a secret language or code when players are uh, confronted with some of the deeper, darker, more uh, strange or nefarious things that happen in your world. Uh, just let it be known what's up front. Just let the players know, and let them understand that, hey, you do realize that you've got like three chances to convince this person. If not, it's going to change, I don't know, the laws of the land or something like that. This will change the hey, you went through the um, mechanical wormhole that let you get to Proxima B, but simply by your interactions, now they're changing um, the security around the wormhole that was mechanically erected in the I don't know, geosynchronous orbit over the eighth planet from the binary star system. It's going to be more difficult for you to get back through that same Stargate or something like that. And to let the players understand that, and judge whether how difficult something is oh, I dare say that many independent games now, and as well as myself, would love to place that in the player's hands. Basically, a lot of this is often used with dice pool games. It's like, oh no, your character gets to roll two dice. You can pick, you can grab three dice or more and add it to your dice pool, but understand every time you grab an extra dice increases the consequences of failure. And putting that in the player's hands oftentimes is much more. There is a greater drama and propensity for the players to like wipe the sweat off their brow than to just tell the players, well, it's a 30 difficulty, you have a 2% chance of achieving it. It's like, no, no, no. With the dice you have, you have a low chance of success or failure. You can grab more dice or you can add more modifiers to make it easier, but understand it also means the consequences of loss makes it even greater. And it can be, how do I say this? When you allow players to do that, the difficulty can adjust greatly. So for me, as a person who likes the static wall has some handholds. It is I'm going to pick an arbitrary number. It is rated at 37, and that number doesn't move. But in a lot of indie games, they'll say, okay, you know what? That you can make that wall very easy to climb, but that means after you scale the wall, the challenges on the other side of that wall become even more difficult. And that quantum ogering of more difficulty in the future um, can be a hard concept to grasp if you are not comfortable being a improv seat of the pants type of game master. And in many indie games, being and actually this is something strangely enough that goes all the way back to the OSR, that random tables and randomizers and using the dice and charts or tables or cards or whatever gives us a soft landing when we as game masters fall off the edge and don't know where we're going. So a game that has a cushion for us to fall into. Wow, they decided to take three extra dice so they could easily scale the wall. How do I now account for the more difficult challenges when they scale the wall that I didn't have notes for? And many games like Blades in the Dark and other games will go, well, narratively, just explain why it's more difficult. And oh, by the way, here's some mechanical rules to make that a reality. Um, Also, because of the another thing that happens, and this is something Drew just mentioned and has mentioned before about not worrying about how skillful characters are in the game Dune, or there's a version of the game Dune, Legend of the Five Rings, and I'm trying to think of another game, and I can't think of it. Fate does this a little bit, where the the reason why a character is performing something makes it easier for them to achieve that goal. So a character that has stats like guilt and resolution and or resolve or willpower or honor or duty, honesty, things like that. They may have the Pendragon. Woo, there's a game there's a I don't have the full title in my head. But anyway, some of these games don't have stats like sword fighting and combat and things. Instead, they will have something like duty or truth or honor or faith, and or even greed or wealth status, and you'll have a number associated with it. And your success and failure as a character has nothing to do with how difficult it is to scale the wall or or deceive the guard or how many enemies. It's about why it is you're trying to achieve a thing. Is it are you relying on your faith, which is a higher number, on your character, and you just hoping that you get through it? You're using your faith. I believe we will succeed. Or is it about honor? You know, hey, I promised I would achieve, get the MacGuffin back home, and I'm a person who always keeps their word. Yes. And Anon, thank you very much for phrasing this much easier than I would. It can seem a bit strange. It's like, well, wait a minute. Just because your character has faith, why would it be easier for you to navigate the dark castle than my character who suffers from guilt or anxiety or something like that, right? It's like that's weird. Now that's far more, I'm going to say air quotes, storytelling. So a writer, a novelist, a screenwriter, wants to tell the story of their characters, where character comes first, and all the other things in the story, the side effects, I mean, the special effects and CGI and all that kind of stuff, the props, the locations that are done, the volume that it's filmed on or whatever, that's all side note. Maybe we want to know why it is the character's doing what they're doing. And do we believe that they should succeed based on their them fighting against their inner demons or something? And so we follow a character's success or failure based on, will that character succumb to their guilt, or will they overcome it by having faith that this will work out, as a storytelling element? And that can be very strange because it's like, well, wait a minute. Aren't there armed professional guards? This character doesn't have the skill to overcome this challenge. But if you would take a look, I think the strangest blending of the two is a movie known as RRR, and let's see, 2022 um, movie, and it is wild. This movie is incredible, and it is all character, but it's all action and CGI and everything. There's the Natu Natu dance that is just incredible. I would love to play it, but I know I'll get dinged for it. But there's some incredible scenes in this movie, and but the movie is all about the characters, the bromance that these two characters have that are opposite sides, and there's a whole lot of spoiler and stuff into it. But the movie's incredible, and the reason why it just made me think of it is that, like, Anonymous says, or Anon says, some characters just want consistent causality, and consistent causality is that to climb the wall with a difficulty of 37 shouldn't change based on what I ate for breakfast that morning, or or because I had a uh, un, unresolved conflict because my character had relationship with mother, and I talked with my mother on the Tritio screen while I'm here on Olympus, near Olympus Mons, to scale this mountain. And because of the results of that conversation, now it's more or less, more difficult for me to climb the mountain. That shouldn't have any effect. The mountain should be the same. And in simulation as games, that makes a lot of sense. But if you are an indie designer and you're designing a game to say, well, wait a minute, um, your loyalty to the crown, or your um, you've picked traits for your character, the more you fall into the traits in your character, like your uh, virtues and your vices, the more you fall into those, the easier you have to succeed. And there are many games that actually do that as well. Usually, when it comes to things like inspiration, fate points, moxie, luck, sometimes a simulationist game will add those bennies into the game to simulate that, right? Like where it's like, well, climbing Olympus Mons on Mars is the same, except we're going to give you a benefit because your character has the greed written down as a vice. You decided to engage in your greed by trying to steal some gold you shouldn't have. Therefore, you get this Benny. Oh, great! I have inspiration. I'm going to roll 2 sided and take the best one for me to climb this mountain, even though I'm mixing genres. I'm mixing both genres and games and mechanisms, but you guys get the point. Um, also, I think something that should be stated is, and often overlooked, and something that I greatly embrace, and is actually strangely, one of the reasons why I've been hired to do some freelance writing, and that is we don't need to adjudicate anything with a single die roll. We can do this with multiple die rolls over a series of time, and based on how you stretch out or compress that time, can scale up or down. I'm using the same word for two different purposes. You can place the steps of causality higher and higher or lower and lower based on the time scale of the die roll. So let me see if I can make this a little bit more intricate. So players may need to convince the Galactic Empire to set up a blockade because you know that an alien armada is coming and they have the ability to sneak past all of the sensors or something in a particular region of space coming from Proxima B. And I'm talking sci-fi because we talk science fiction here. And the Galactic Empire does not believe the player characters at all. It's like, no, there's no evidence of this. And the players may even suspect that there are people inside the Galactic Empire Council who is enabling the enemy to sneak past their defenses. Drew says that is again rolling for conflict resolution. Now, follow me on this, Drew, because yes, this is conflict resolution, and we can mix task resolution on here. But what could happen is, and something that I think is often missing even in simulationism, is that maybe this infiltration may be happening over hours, days, weeks, months, even years, and this infiltration will in, is making more danger for the players and the society they live in. And over time, the players may need to convince more and more, like, listen, it's getting very dangerous. And they may need to have many more confrontations with people in power or the enforcement arm of the Galactic Empire or something like that to say, hey, just like I roll for dismantle the whole Galactic Empire. Okay, all right, three body problem and hitting the button to contact the aliens after the aliens were like, please don't contact us anymore. You don't want us to get here. And you're like, click. You're all invited. There's a party in my subconscious and you're all invited. Yeah. And but I think much like the clocks in Blades in the Dark, which is funny because I've used clocks my entire career. I just never called them that. Sometimes I've called them countdown timers or tension timers. Rune hammers, ICRPG, index card RPG uses the same thing, but far more immediate. Basically, roll a d4 at the beginning or during combat, and then you count down. And when it gets to that countdown, hey, I rolled a 3. You count down 3, 2, 1, and then when 1 hits, bam, something happens. Some dramatic change happens, and My milkshake brings all the aliens to the yard. Oh no, but I love it. All right, Khalees. Since that's actually a great example of what I'm talking about with scale and scope issues. Yeah, I mean, and instead of like, and I wish this was introduced more, especially in simulationist games, because in indie games they've kind of solved this issue already. We kind of know this, but in simulationist games, to tell the players, hey, listen, within a 5 month period, I need to pick a time grade. So I'm going to say 5 months, the alien armada will have slipped it behind the defenses, and there will be no way to stop them from decimating a dozen planets. And each month, the players get a single die roll, and it keeps adding up. Is it a success or failure? Success or failure? And they get 2 months in, and they're just like, if we fail this third roll, that we won't be able to, or you scale the roll. Okay, we've been able to convince one, two, three of the attaché. We have another uh, envoy or something we have to convince to get them to put up these barriers, or to put people on high alert, or whatever, or to get the military military industrial complex machine up and running that we've been fighting against, which is why they don't believe us as characters in the first place. And keeping track of that and letting it grow. Now, mind you, this we can shrink this down even further to say, okay, it's going to take you 3 actions to convince the guard. And your character's like, okay, well, I have the honesty trait and I have the faith trait. Can I use that? And it's like, well, you can only use it if you're using your honesty and your faith in an open and honest way to convince the guard. And like, well, yes, I'm doing that. I'm going to appeal to the guard, the captain of the guard, and openly and honestly begging them that, my dedication to the sun god is not just me being blinded blinded by the light, but really that you really need to put the place on high alert, even though you don't sense anything. And does that mean I get a +3? Yeah, you get 3 extra dice. You get a +3 modifier. You get plus 25% or whatever, and roll the dice, and then keep track. Okay, you succeeded once. Now you have to, you know, using that as a, how do I explain this? As chapter breaks, almost as like the ticking clock of, great, we succeeded here. Now we go through the adventure. Let's come back to this. Oh, it's downtime. Let's do this again. Okay, come back to it. And using that to, and then also allowing us to live in the fiction, fiction first. Do the players acquire blackmail evidence to turn one of the galactic senators on their side? Maybe they do. Okay, maybe that doesn't require a die roll. They got the blackmail evidence. Hey, it makes perfect sense that this arrogant senator or whatever will comply, at least temporarily. The players are like, look, we don't care about whether they like us or not. We just need this to be defended. We'll worry about the consequences later, and doing that. So, yeah, I do definitely agree. Anon says, like, can I just roll my enigmas to solve the riddle? I, yeah, right. Yeah. If not, should that even be a skill? If so, how do how do you implement those additional constraints without harming player agency? And this is my argument against, I walk into the room, I make a perception check. Right? You mentioned it the other way. Do a thing to do the thing. Tell me what you're going to do, and then we act on doing it, rather than a character having like, I have the enigma attribute or skill or ability or my character. Can't I just roll that to solve the puzzle? Now, what we could do, or maybe there should be something, you guys know I love to talk about TERS: time, energy, resources, et cetera, social clout, and economics. But um, I often adjust my difficulties by using time, energy, and resources. So um, much like building a house, people don't build houses and make a single die roll, right? Because building a house, you may have the time, energy, and resources to fix any mistakes that came along. unless there's something in the narrative that causes a home builder to purposefully or to have a issue with building the home that has a problem that crops up later, which would be the narrative of the game. So an example would be, I normally don't make die rolls to drive to work unless because I have the time, energy, and resources to get to work without bothering to roll the dice. So that's why we don't roll dice. It's like, um, can the wizard find the ancient tome in the library? Well, given enough time, given enough energy, right? Are they older? Can they use 2 months to go through the library? Given enough resources, hey, allies, I need you to look for this book. Here's the title. Here's what it says on the binding. Please help me look through the book. And so, given enough time, energy, and resources, don't bother making a roll. But if you eliminate or put a constraint on a thing, you don't have enough time. You're too tired. You are tired, exhausted, confused, emotional, those kind of things. Hey, you don't have enough energy, resources. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough food. You don't have enough supplies to survive the storm or something like that. Then you start making um, challenging roles and skills. And I would even say when it comes to social, because I use the word terse, so social clout and emotional energies are could also be things for your character. Hey, did an ally just die? Well, maybe you're not thinking straight. Make a die roll, right? Normally you wouldn't roll for this, but right now, yeah. Your cousin was you're a warlock and your cousin was drawn out down into the pits of hell to pay for something that you did. You are distraught. You're going to have to make a die roll to find that ancient tome, because your failure means that your cousin is down in the fourth layer of hell, suffering. What's the plane? I don't know what the fourth layer. I'm going to guess it's DIS. I always pronounce it D, not dis, but whatever the case may be. And the longer they're there, the greater chance they'll come back and be transformed and become your greatest enemy, even though were like you weren't just niece and nephew or something like that. You were like um, tighter than that. Drew says, sure, you usually do not roll to drive to work, but today there is a Sharknado happening, a roll to avoid. Yeah, today there's a Sharknado. Yeah, exactly, right? Hey, Prince says, hey, Barmer says, one element that I like is, quote, your good skill roll gives you hints towards the puzzle completion or gives you puzzle in the first place. Yep, absolutely. I mean, and here's another thing too, because I'm a fiction first kind of person as well. If a player comes up with a good idea, to me, there is true random mechanical value in a player that is immersed in my game world. And if you are willing to put in the time and effort and energy to be immersed and grab onto something that brings value to the game, and I sit there nodding my head like, hell yeah. To me, that's a successful die roll, right? And it's, when I say it's random, none of us know the thing is going to happen until it happens. And when that random event happens, and when I say event, I don't mean like rolling the dice random encounter. I mean you yourself amongst other people playing a game, and you get the spark of imagination. That randomizer to me is just as equivalent as rolling the dice. And so I take it in my head canon is that your value is your die roll, so you get a success on that thing. Of course you solved the puzzle. Of course you found the clue. Of course you convinced the guard. You're the one that discovered the leverage to convince the guard in the first place. Why are we making die rolls, right? And that didn't come about through cheating. That came about through investment in the narrative. That came about through you playing your character. it's much like the argument about people portraying characters. Um, oh, this is a whole nother subject. We'll talk about people portraying characters negative aspects, harming forward progress, but adding to the game. And there's some games that like you to do that, and there's plenty of games that hate you doing that. When you roll dice knowing that you are not the best at the thing, or a character engages in a behavior that is counter to their success, um, and some games don't want you to do that explicitly or implicitly. So yeah. Anon says, and now we're talking about stakes, or more precisely, the cost of success or failure. And again, this is, and I think this goes with all games. Let players know what will happen if they succeed or fail. And if you're playing a game, or even if you're not playing a game that has degrees of success or failure, let people know that. I mean, what's weird, what I find very strange is, even in classic D20 systems, we often put value on the higher the number, the greater the success, even though there's no mechanism for it. So let's say the difficulty is 12, and one player rolls a total, adding all their modifiers, of 15. Another one rolls all their modifiers and is 18. We think the person that rolled 18 got a greater success than 15 in D20, but there's no difference between the two. As long as you roll 12 or higher, you succeed, right? Or maybe it's above 12. But whatever the case may be, we often think that's the case, but there is no difference between rolling a 13 and a 19. Uh, in combat, maybe, but even skill checks, no, because there isn't even a automatic success or failure for skills by rolling a 1 or a 20. And I've even had people complain about automatic success or failure is stupid, where I'm just going, well, it's not automatic. You actually have to roll the 1 or the 20 to achieve the auto success or fail. What it means is that if you roll a 1, there is no modifier will get it above a 1. And if you roll a 20, there's no modifier that will reduce it below 20. But it rubs people the wrong way. Like, well, if I roll a 1, that makes no sense because my skill is so high, I should be able to do that automatically. And part of me would go, well, yeah, then why would we bother rolling the dice? Unless it's an interesting or dramatic, or adds to the tension. Remember, back to the time, energy, resources, social clout, emotion that would affect the outcome of said thing. So an example would be, um, maybe it's interesting to see if there's success or failure because maybe the players didn't have enough time to do the thing. Hey, I got the codes to disable the launch codes of the antimatter missiles being launched towards the galactic border to take out the Armada, but we want to stop those missiles, those, you know, hyper sub light speed missiles. But you've got the codes in your hand, but you were just too late. You rolled a 1, right? Maybe the energy, you were tired, distraught, overslept, injured, um, uh, had a broken leg, whatever. You couldn't. You tried to drag your way to the console to type in the code to disable, and you couldn't do it. Resources. Maybe you didn't have the money. You didn't have the equipment, the correct tools. You didn't have enough oxygen in your spacesuit. I don't know. You didn't have enough power in your power armor when it is at 3%, and your power armor goes dead just before you were able to type in the code or something. Right? There's many narratives that we could fill in. Social cloud is another one. Maybe you try to run into the main chamber of the Galactic Council, and the guards grab you by your arms to hold you back as you scream, "Don't launch those missiles!" And they look at it, take them away, take them to the brig or whatever, or jail under the United Galactic Federation building or something. Emotions. Maybe the character's emotionally distraught, scared, paralyzed, um, unable to say the words that are necessary to convince a person. Maybe you're just nervous around this individual. Maybe you have an emotional connection to this person that's unresolved. That is a barrier for you to say, please trust me, type in these codes. And that person looks at you and is like, you had me fired or arrested, or you called me stupid when I was 8 years old and I still hate you for that, right? Um, I'm not going to do anything for you, that kind of thing. So, but anyway, guys, thank you very much for letting me ramble on about a difficult to assign concept that goes through the minds of us indie designers all the time when it comes to scale and success and failure and consequences of such. And for someone like myself, who is self-appointed exploration third pillarist in the tabletop RPG community, I got all that out in one saying. Um, I'm very much a person who's like, yeah, I love the environment being involved with dramatic and dynamic combat and exploration and such. And yeah, I don't like the roll once for survival. I'm like, no, you have to navigate your way through this, and your successes in one place may lead to further successes. Your failure in another at another spot may draw you or make you go down the wrong path for exploration or something. And also, exploration can give us knowledge that helps us further in the future. Uncovering, finding the ancient tome would help you unravel the great ritual that's being spoken by the ubiquitous cults that we love to have in our tabletop role playing games. Or maybe you found a small trinket that would be a great gift to a person that you have an unrequited love with, and you just happen to pocket something that would seem pretty worthless to everybody else, but is very would be very a heartfelt gift to someone that would help you convince someone on the galactic council. And this person, without a word spoken, grasps the small trinket to their chest, smiles at you, tilts their head, and then walks into the chambers and expresses those words that you needed to express yourself while you're held outside the chamber under armed guard or something like that. And all of these things, and mind you, I'm creating all these situations at the top of my head, but it's fiction first, it's narrative. And how do we describe it? How do we bring across success, failure, or anything in between? And what scale is that success? Do you convince one guard or all the guards? Do you convince one senator or all the senators? And dare I say, you can convince someone to help you that could change their mind, or maybe you don't convince them now, but later, as time goes on, they are convinced of your desire to help out, and they then will help you, but maybe on a time scale that's like, no, I needed you to say yes then. It's 3 weeks later, too late, right? Which makes even greater stories. So, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Thank you very much for stopping by as well. I really appreciate it. And again, if you guys have anything to talk about, or concepts, or anything, maybe I'm not the greatest um, talking head on the interwebs, but I try, and I appreciate all of you for tolerating tolerating me as I try to get better and better. So, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. We'll take you out with a crash to alien ship and a car from probably the 1960s who stumbled upon such a discovery. What is in the great spacecraft? I don't know. But whatever the case may be, you guys have a great day. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace and tranquility.